I'm actually curious. I said the word culture, and I started thinking about one thing that stood out to me when I moved back from the United States, and that was, and I brought this up a couple times on this podcast, that is the Latin greeting or kiss. And when I first moved to Southern Baja, I learned quickly, especially when I was meeting women or wives of Mexicans that I either worked with or hung out with, that the accepted and common greeting was a kiss on the cheek. And I first was kind of uncomfortable for me, but became part of the whole introduction process. And then it was actually weird when I moved back to the United States and was trying to kiss my buddies' wives when I saw them. They didn't think it was cool. But I haven't noticed that in Northern Baja, and I'm wondering, is it just because I haven't spent as much time up in Northern Baja in that context, or is it a different culture north and south?
There is a little bit of culture difference north and south that I find, but the kiss on the cheek, I would say it's more of a warm greeting up in the north.
Yeah,
it was something that I had to get used to as well. From a business standpoint, it doesn't really happen, but when it's friends that are introducing you to other friends, it's very, very common and very typical.
Yeah. So from a time standpoint, what's your how often are you crossing the border and spending time in Tecate as the owner of a business there?
Over the last couple of years, I'm typically down at the plant once a week, unless there is a project that we have going on, and I can go down as many as 3 times a week. Sure. Sometimes I'll stay down because it is quite close. Right now from where I'm living in East County, it's about 50 minutes door to door. And I drive opposite traffic, so it makes it really nice and very, very convenient.
Yeah. What? Give us some tricks. Border crossing. What's the guy who goes across regularly? I mean, I had my own when I was doing it. What are the best times, best days? Tell me what you know about crossing the border in Tecate. Well, or don't, because you don't want to give away the secrets.
Well, it's times of year are really big. So the holiday season, I typically wouldn't drive down there. So I'd be walking across, and we have the guys. We either keep a car on each side, or we have some of the guys from the plant pick us up. But typically, when I would drive down, I just schedule my day so I'm there a little bit later in the morning, and then I take off from the factory and drive home, especially in the summertime, right around 6:30, and I find that from 1 p.m. to the 5 o'clock time in the afternoon, it's probably 30 to 45 minutes. But after, say, 6 o'clock, it's there's been a number of times that I can just drive right across.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now with a lot of the immigration issues that they have going, there's a lot of people that are driving up from San Ysidro and Tijuana, and they're trying to they're letting the lines become longer. This week it was in the 2-hour mark. Ooh. Because they don't want people they don't want people coming from Tijuana to cross there in Tecate. They kind of want to keep it in a geographical area. So that's been going on for about a month now. It's almost over. They'll probably go back to it being regular in the next couple of weeks.
So let's go back to the business side of this thing, area that I honestly know very little about, and I'm curious. How does NAFTA play into what you're doing, or does it? Raw material. I mean, I've heard different pieces of information, like if you can bring raw material in from another country or out into Mexico from the United States, process it, turn it into a product, and then move it out. Yeah, and I'm butchering this. So tell me what the process, or what am I not getting correct here?
Yeah, no problem. It all comes down to tariffs. So NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement, it was a program that they put in place to forego tariffs or taxes on goods that cross the border. So, I mean, you pretty much had it correct. It's any materials that are created in North America. So if it was steel, it couldn't be steel from China that was brought in. That would still be taxed. But if you purchased steel from a U.S. steel mill and needed to cross it across the border, Tijuana, Tecate, even out in Monterey is another big Maquila area. You could cross that tariff free as long as you kept track of it. So the big mystery for people is all of the raw materials that come across, say nuts and bolts. I mean, it could be thousands of parts and products that go into making a product has to be accounted for. So everything that we cross down into Mexico is inventoried. It's on bill of materials, so that way we can prove that it was actually put into a product and taken out of Mexico. What they're trying to eliminate is companies that come down on a tariff-free basis and then resell the goods into Mexico. So
right.
that's what those agreements are designed to do. Yeah.
And for the most part, Steve, is all of that process fairly I hesitate to say the word easy and the word government in the same sentence, or governments. But is the process fairly easy, or is it complex to the point where you have to hire or outsource the management of the administrative side of that?
Well, it used to be. Back in the early 2000s, it was very, very simple. So once it was enacted, it was much easier than it is today, because today it's growing into a couple different agreements, and it's like any government program. There's rules that sometimes they follow and sometimes they don't. So they let you skirt around some things, and if you do that for say 6 months and that's your way of business, and then something changes, you always have to be aware of what the law is, so that way you're ready for it, whether they enforce it or not.
Yeah.
So these days it is outsourcing. We do everything in-house, but there's outside brokers that we use, and there's outside auditors that come in. Now with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, it's changing a little bit. So they're really cracking down on the rules of NAFTA. It's basically the same agreement. It's just been updated. So now Mexico has the ability to come into your plant at any time, and you have to have the ability to let them know exactly what's on the production floor at any time, when it was imported, what product it's going into, and when it's scheduled to go out. And they can go into any rack and any bin anywhere in the property, and everything has to be categorized. And it's all done via computer. But back in the early 2000s, there wasn't even internet down there, so it was very, very, very difficult. Now there's dial-up internet's more DSL. That's not really cable yet, but it's high-speed internet, so it makes it much easier.
So. Wow, I thought that there was like real high-speed internet in Tecate now. I mean, they ran fiber optics all the way down to Cabo 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, but it's still all done over the phone lines right now. Telnor is the only internet service currently in Tecate. There's a couple others down in Tijuana has the high speed, but it hasn't gotten out into.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well, you were sharing with me earlier when we were talking a couple days ago about a very interesting system, method, strategy that you have in place at your company from a employee incentive or morale standpoint. And it's so fitting, because as a guy who has spent his entire life in the off-road racing world, and I'll say it. I usually say it at least once on this podcast. Yep, my background's in off-road racing, but this podcast is not about off-road racing. But I think it is very ironic and interesting that in two states that have really embraced the off-road racing culture, and really in all reality, off-road racing, or the Baja 1000 and the Baja 500, have really become a part of the Baja culture. I don't say Mexican culture, because Mexico's a big country, but definitely there's not very many places you can go in Baja and talk to anybody that's been there for more or for less than a year or two, that doesn't know about those races and in some way isn't connected to, have an affinity for, or just like to watch the race cars go by. So tell us a little bit about the program that you put in place within your company. Your very inexpensive employee morale and incentive program.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, I think the Baja 500 and the 1,000 are actually holidays in Baja. So
yeah, right. Yeah,
it's what But what we've done is one of our general managers that runs the plant down in Tecate, his name's Antonio Contreras. He's been racing quads since he, in his younger days, probably for I think 12 years now. And he's won in his class. He's on quads, couple different classes. They've won the 500 and the 1,000. So that was a pretty good accomplishment for them. As he's gotten older, and I've been allowed to tag along on some of their trips. I love Baja. I love the off-roading scene, and I was introduced to it more from pre-running than racing. And that's what I really loved, is because you got to see a lot of the out of the way places that you really don't get to see as a tourist, just, running down, Highway 1 or any of the main roads. You really got to get up and get in the country and really see, the backside of Baja. So as he was aging a little bit, and, quads are pretty dangerous, so it was the old adage, with age comes a cage.
That's right.
We ended up purchasing a Class 8 truck from some friends that we had down there that race trophy and trophy spec. So we were able to get into that class, and we've been running it now for just over. This is going to be our first score season, but we've raced some code races with it last year, so it's been really fun. So we created a small race team down there. We allocated some property out of the factory. We built another building, and it's kind of grew over the last year into it's a whole other business now. So,
but I remember you saying that it's become this component of the business that with the employees, there's and I don't know, are guys getting a chance to ride in the truck or go to the races? I gotta believe that it's and you did mention this, that it's a great opportunity to build morale and get your group together and go to these events, regardless of who's driving the race car or actually riding in it. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. And us being a large metal shop, we've got a lot of welders, a lot of fabricators, and there's some pretty talented guys. And everyone that's in the factory grew up on off-road racing in Baja, because they live in Baja. So for us to bring that to the Auto Vac team has been really, really neat, because we can have some really great contests to see who's going to be able to be on the race team. A lot of the T-shirts that we have down there, we just don't give to anybody. So we make these guys earn it, and it really becomes a special thing within the team, because it kind of gets them out of the day-to-day monotony, so to speak. And it just really increases the morale in the factory when we let them be a part of that team if they earn it. So it's been really, really good for us in that sense, for sure.
So you've been operating in Baja now for close to 20 years. I know, just from my experience watching so many regions change just from a development and real estate or building standpoint. And those are some of the obvious ones. But having now operated for close to 20 years, what are some changes that you're seeing, good or bad?
Well, the implementation of technology has probably been the biggest change down in the Baja sector. So I've seen it go from not having, phone lines to internet. Now it's, as you cross the border now, it's very, very similar, in some respects to San Diego, even though, as far as the technology, I think they're bringing a Starbucks into Tecate now. I've heard that's coming in. Yeah. So we've got, a lot of the car washes that we see here in San Diego are now going into Tecate. So a lot of real estate is, I'm not going to say it's booming down there, but it really, a lot of the car dealerships now you see going into Tecate, which hasn't happened. The Nissans, the Chevys, the Dodge Rams. You see these dealerships coming in,